It's wonderful being in this place for two reasons. One, you have a beautiful campus. It also reminded me of the fact I nearly became an engineer. I attended engineering school for the whole of one day in Bangalore, and like most people of my generation, wanted to be a computer scientist and wanted to change the world through computers. Luckily, I was ragged very badly the first day. I went into this engineering college in Bangalore, and the ragging was so bad I never had the courage to go back there the next day. But coming from a very typical Indian middle class family, you can't stay at home, right? You got to go to college. And not having enough money to go sit in a theater, I went to the place beside the engineering college, which fortunately for me was a Ramakrishna ashram. And the next 2 months of my life I spent in their library studying the works of an extraordinary Indian who is now iconized more than followed. Swami Vivekananda and his life and message was what I had for the next 2 months of my life. That changed the way I saw life itself. Two of his books, and I think every young Indian should read them. One was his call to the nation and to the youth of India. Two books which are very powerful, and they relate the message of Swamiji and his work. That day I made up my mind, I'm going to do something different. Something very different from traditional mainstream middle class thinking. Become a doctor, become an engineer, go join a company, go abroad. And I walked away from it all. I graduated from Mysore Medical College and moved away into the forest. And for 25 years I have lived with indigenous tribals, in their huts, with them, like them, amongst them. And those were the best years of my life. You should try it sometimes. And what I'm going to narrate to you is what I believe the single most powerful statement that changed my life. And what Vivekananda said. He said, we Indians need the power of 3H. Every young Indian needs it today, because we're all in a world where we only see one side of India. You walk into a VIT campus, that's not India. That's just an imagination of India presented to you. The real India is elsewhere, and I think we have to get introduced to that India. For that we need the first H that Swamiji spoke of, the heart to feel. You really have to feel for the fact that despite all of modern attainments, every Indian has a cell phone on his hand today, we can travel to the Mars at the cheapest possible cost, but we still haven't given 65% of our Indians a toilet. And that's something you got to worry about. You can have all the civil engineers you can create in this country, but we still can't find solutions for 50% of Indians whom we can't even provide 40 liters of water a day. I'm not talking of 140 which the rest of the world gives. It's 40 liters. We have to ask ourselves questions, because 54% of our children born today at this point of time are still malnourished till they reach the age of 5, and that's an unacceptable thing. You may not believe this, but India produces enough food grain to just waste away 30%, and we actually gift it to rodents on the roadside. We don't even eat it. That's one side of the story. We have 680 million metric tons of food grains rotting in the open in India because we don't have engineers with post-harvest technology knowledge. As simple as that. We just don't know what to do with it. On the other side, 68% of India eats less than 1800 kilocalories per day. We were just having lunch and looking around and looking at all the kind of rich food going around. I was wondering, that food would have meant one Indian village 1 month's meal maybe. We just don't think about all this when you just throw food away. But till you can feel for these problems, I don't think you're going to make a big difference in life. We feel today, we are trained to feel by our parents, trained to feel about all the courses you can accomplish, you can acquire, degrees you can get, the money you can earn. The life's aspiration seems to revolve around the tag of salary and the place where you're going to live in. But you've forgotten everything else in life. And so what I'm going to speak to you and share with you are stories which are much more than stories. As a young physician who just went away and thought I could change the world, I thought I'll be an Albert Schweitzer, went into this forest. The harsh realities of life hit me. I still remember it was 1987 December. 21, 22-year-old physician, I thought, oh, I can wave a magic wand and India will change. And I had a call. And this is a community which didn't want me. There were indigenous tribals in the forest. They thought I'm an outsider. And the joke going around was, this guy must not have finished his MBBS at all. That's why he's come here. And I had to live with all the kind of ridicule that you can heap on people who think differently. And suddenly somebody came and told me young Madhi was in labor. I say young because she was 14 years old. At 14, in India, even today we have children who become mothers. And this Madhi tribals don't have structured marriage in the place where I come from. They just live together, and God forbid she gets pregnant, she has a child, as simple as that. And this Madhi was pregnant, and I thought, oh my God, great opportunity. Now I can go deliver her and tell the world I'm a doctor. Because I wanted the affirmation of this community to recognize me as a physician, to tell me that I can change lives. So here I was, went that evening to Madhi's house, small hut. It's Project Tiger area, so you got to worry about tigers, leopards, elephants, and then I reached that hut. And I find Madhi labor pains had just started. And in medical school, we are taught that the first labor, what we call the primary gravida, takes at least 24 hours for her to deliver after the pain comes. So young girls, watch out, your first labor is going to be painful. So this Madhi wasn't having a first baby, and she was not yet ready for having the child yet. So I thought, let me come back the next morning. So I walked back to my hut, the little hut that was a little far away. Next morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I start walking towards Madhi's hut again. On the way, a very elderly tribal, Puttama, stopped me and said, where are you going so early? 6 o'clock in the morning is when the elephants come back from the river. And I said, I'm going to go deliver Madhi. And she laughed at me and said, you don't have to, she's already delivered. I was so damn disappointed. No, what the hell? Why couldn't this baby wait for 8 more hours? A lost opportunity, right? No, I could have delivered and this baby is to born in the middle of the night. Somehow I had to make myself feel useful. So I decided to go to Madhi's house, and I can still remember the story so vividly because it's something which I can't take away. It scarred my brain forever. I'm standing at the hut of Madhi, pleading with Madhi to bring out a newborn baby, because medical science also teaches us, very unhygienic labor conditions. The child can get conjunctivitis, it can lose its eyes. Just put a few little eye drops into it, put a little antiseptic on the umbilical stump and stuff like that. So I thought, let me at least do that, since I couldn't deliver Madhi at least. And I kept on telling Madhi to bring the baby out, and she kept on refusing. This went on for 5-6 minutes, and I got irritated. This Bangalore-born, educated, I topped my university in medicine, so I thought, this Madhi should know all about that and come out and respond to me when I call her out. And Madhi was not doing that. After 7-8 minutes of irritation, I said, if you are not going to come in right now, I am going to enter your house, and in tribal society, you don't enter a house. That's a rule in tribals. Outsider doesn't come into the house. So I said, if you don't come out, I am going to get inside and see the baby. And Madhi's reply immediately, this was 40 years after our independence, he said, please don't come in. I have nothing to wear. Here was Madhi, a 14-year-old child who shouldn't even have got pregnant, gets pregnant, delivers her own baby in the middle of the night, and the only sari she's wrapped around herself is soiled with blood. She's washed it, put it on a hut, and is waiting for the sun to come and dry to wear it back again. This is the India that is even there today. 40 to 50% of India lives like this. And this is the India you've got to get exposed to. And this is what we got to really think about, the slogan of today's vision, tomorrow's reality. Visioning for whom, visioning by whom, and for what. And if you and I don't listen to the message of Vivekananda and say the second and third H, the second H is said, the head to think. How do I contribute to solve societal problems? What kind of social development do I look for? Do I look only for GDP growth, 5%, 6%, 8%, 10%, a meaningless acquisition of wealth which doesn't change human lives, except my life maybe, or each person's life here? In what way can you think differently and look at the last H, the hands to work? Can I feel for this country? Can I feel for thousands of people? Not just India, humanity itself. Half the world eats less than what they're supposed to be eating. Close to 4 billion people in this world don't have access to good water. So we got to ask these questions. Why is it like this? An Ebola virus, I heard a friend of mine said a very good quote this morning. He said, hunger actually affects more people. More people die of hunger around the world, but Ebola is suddenly a scare because Ebola can also affect the rich. And so everybody's worried now. Hunger can't affect the rich, so nobody's worried about it. So we have to worry, the hands to work, and we have to solve these problems. How do we do it? Look at what country we had. Till 150, 200, 300 years ago, 1800s, till 1600 actually, 35% of global GDP came from this country, from India. For some reason, in the last 250, 300 years, we've abdicated our roles as citizens, our responsibility as socially conscious people even. Today, every third poor person in the world lives in India. 35% of global poverty burden is India. And we don't have to be poor. We don't have to be poor at all. What we are poor in actually today is value-based leadership. What we need is leaders, and that has to come from people like you. People between 15 years and 55 years is 60% of India. If this 40-year bandwidth of India decides, I'm going to change India, we can actually be a real, true global superpower. Not superpower in terms of weaponry and money, but superpower, the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the extraordinary story that we told the rest of the world. That's in our cultural DNA. Our cultural DNA is to take care of the world. Today we have forgotten to take care of our neighbor even. So we have a long way to go. And what can you do? What can you really vision out? I have a simple prescription for all of us. If each of us today make up our minds and look at just 3 things that we want. What's the kind of country we want? All of us know the country we want. We want a country which has got no deprivation, no strife. We want a country where everybody is equal. We want a country where the poor and rich are not different. Many of you may not know this. The top 20% of India, the so-called rich India, which all of you might be aspiring to join, controls and generates 85% of India's wealth. Mere 40 families in India control 40% of India's GDP. And we're a nation of 1.25 billion people. The bottom 20%, amongst whom I have lived for so long, they generate 1.5% of India's wealth. That is social inequity for you. And remember what this is causing. 1/3 India today is violence infested. Every 3rd district in India, somebody believes that they can actually bring in equity with the gun. And this is where the message of Vivekananda, he said India cannot rise through a revolution. How India can rise is through an evolution. He said it is not by pulling down the rich, but pushing up the poor should India change. And that is why we all need to get our act together and today join hands in what I believe in creating this new vision of India. An extraordinary country where there's no discrimination between rich and poor. Every day, it's a shame in this country, a country which worships woman as God. We don't even spare a 6-month-old child and rape it. How can we live in a country where every day, the city of Bangalore where I was born, I'm ashamed to even call it Bangalore now. Every other day there's a story. Even this morning there's a rape story reported from Bangalore. How do we live with this country? How do you go beyond all this? Can we really look at a fact that even today, we have a beautiful campus here in VIT, but you'll all be stunned to believe the number of research publications that come out of one MIT is much higher than all the publications that come out all of the universities put together in India. Aren't we capable of writing a good research paper in higher education? We have to change all this, my friends. And that change should happen because of each of us. So I believe strengthen 3 things. We have to strengthen the economic capital of India. There's no doubt. We have to look at all the things that we can do. We are still, 20 people on a farm of 1 acre in Karnataka produces 20 quintals of ragi. It's a joke. I've stayed with farmers in the US where on 1 acre of tomato farming, they produce 65 tons of tomato. And the farmer told me if I produce anything less than that, it's unviable. And in our country, you produce 600 kgs of tomato. You produce 1,000, they won't know what to do with it. They really don't know what, they throw it on the streets and go away. So we got to change. We got to bring in efficiency in the primary sector. We got to bring efficiency in the Make in India cannot be a slogan anymore. We got to make it in India. Otherwise, we can't make India where it should go. And the tertiary sector, that's what is growing crazily. Let's slow it down a bit. It doesn't affect us much. We don't have to be slave capital for the rest of the world in producing codes and programs out here. We can do much more than that. The other 2 capital, which is what my heart is in, we got to grow the human capital of India. And we got to understand development is not about buildings, about toilets, about roads. Development is a constant expansion of human capability. Our capability, your and my capability has to keep expanding. If we join hands in expanding this capability, I think the sky is the limit for us. So let's look at enhancing our potential, enhancing the true inner worth and what Vivekananda called character making and man making and character building education. If we can give that quality of education which makes us concerned about the next man beside us, not look only at ourselves but something beyond us, And Swamiji said it so beautifully. In a letter to the Maharaja of Mysore, he wrote and said, "He alone lives who lives for others. The rest are more dead than alive," he said. That's got to apply to all of us. Let's create that human capital. And finally, let's create social capital for this country. For too long in this country, we have lived a trust deficit. We all seem to always mistrust everybody else. The corporate world mistrusts government, government mistrusts the community, community mistrusts NGOs. We got to build partnerships, we got to build trust, we got to enhance social capital. Everybody is important for this nation, whether it's the politician, the bureaucrat, anybody. So can we all join hands and create an extraordinary social fabric that can take this nation forward? If we can, then our lives are worth it. If we can all live to make a meaningful difference in somebody else's life, it's worth being born. Otherwise, we just live like an animal and pass away. Thank you.